Let's now talk about what's coming next, Dr. Tenpenny.
Well, I think that what we've already talked about a little bit, Alex, is the release of these hemorrhagic viruses. But I think that what's really important is for people to understand the horizon. I mean, where are you in your personal life in terms of preparing for what might come? You know, they're talking about setting up this treaty. The United Nations has already passed the first part of the General Assembly of 194 countries signing on to this international treaty to protect against future biological warfare, which if this goes through, they will have COVID passes for everybody. They will have mandatory vaccines for everybody, which will be a hook to your QR code, and you won't be able to do much without it. You'll barely be able to get food, gasoline, and all these things. And so stopping this treaty that they're trying to get passed at the United Nations to hand over all the sovereignty governments of the world over to the World Health Organization is really a travesty. And
That's right. Tell folks about that treaty. I've mentioned it. We should spend more time on it. There is a treaty right now for all governments to give their authority in an emergency to the UN.
Yes, and the UN and the World Health Organization, because they're doing this to keep everyone safe from the next pandemic, because we know there's going to be more of them. Of course there's going to be more. They got the playbook written now. And now that they have written the playbook and everybody fell in line and all masked up and social distanced and got their Q-tips up their nose and got tested repeatedly over and over and over again. And many of people have gotten this injection, gotten this gene therapy, gene altering, life altering shot that has thousands and thousands of people that have died and millions of people that have become chronically sick. They just all kind of rolled over and did it. So now that they've got everybody in the position of where they are, they're going to do it again and again and again. And if this treaty passes, and for those that don't really understand treaties, I mean, treaties supersede individual government law. So if the U.S. has a treaty with any other country in the world, the things that they sign on to and pass by 2/3 of our Congress, they are supposedly have to pass using our Congress.
And again, Doc, you have that in front of you, because I saw the UN treaty a month ago. I covered it once or twice, but I don't have the name of it. What's the particular? We need to put that on screen so folks know how real this is.
Gosh, I'll have to look for it, Alex.
There it is. WHO quietly pushes for global pandemic treaty that will give organization precedence over participating nations during pandemics. Print it. We'll have it next segment. I just want to give people the actual treaty because it's so incredible. Please continue.
Okay, so what's really important for this is understanding that treaty law supersedes our Constitution. It supersedes our government law, supersedes our trade law, that treaties are the highest law of the global world. So if this gets passed, and all 194 countries sign on, I mean, it'll be one of these situations, Alex, where you can run, but you cannot hide. Because through the World Economic Forum and through what they have done through the Young Globalist committees and the Young Globalist Forum, that they've brought in all of the people from the world, governments, high levels of major multinational companies, even down to state and local governments. You can cut off the head of the Hydra, but the tentacles have run everywhere. And so it's really important for people to be aware of this treaty and not only be looking for what ways that we can stop this at our state and local government, get our sheriffs involved to protect your particular county, to protect where you live, but also to do some preparation and some planning. This treaty, I want to go back to this treaty a little bit and what this actually says, because I think it's really important for people to know. It's like you said, it's called the International Pandemic Treaty. And it says in the first sentence of this, it says on March 3rd, 2020, the Council adopted a decision to authorize the opening for negotiations of an international agreement on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. Response is the key word there.
And for radio listeners, we have it on screen from the UN. There it is.
Right. And for the international negotiating body that they will hold they gave the green light to go ahead and start planning this, that they will be discussing it in August of 2022 with the aim to adopt the full treaty by 2024.
And let me stop you because what you said is so critical earlier. You're a medical doctor, you're a researcher, you publish things, you're smart. You go to meetings. You see them preparing this big disease X, salivating for their power grab, all the propaganda. It's clear Operation Lockstep, Rockefeller Foundation, they're going to do this. They say they're going to use this for global government. It's not our opinion. And so everything is bent towards this. You're saying we just saw a beta test. They won some, they lost some, but now they're going to come back with their new knowledge from their live action war game to hit us with something way, way worse.
Yes, and it's exactly, you said the word exactly right, Alex. It's a beta test. It's just like any other marketing thing you do with a new product. You put it out there, see the response, and then you fall back and analyze. So they've put it out there, they've watched the response. Now they're going to take a little break and fall back and analyze, and they're going to look for what holes do we need to plug so we don't have these little plebe sheep revolting again. You know, we left some doors open that we didn't know that were there. They've pointed out to us how they're going to revolt, how they're going to communicate, how they're going to get together, how they're going to organize. We need to pull back and make sure we close all those doors so they can't do that again. I mean, that's just what a market test is. And, you know, there was a quote from Klaus Schwab just the other day who was saying, you know, we've got to get rid of the internet. Because the internet, there's just too much.
Yeah, he said point blank, we got our ass kicked by disinformation. No, you got your ass kicked despite censorship by humanity just overriding you. So the message is find other holes, attack peacefully on other fronts, and keep exposing them now during this period of them wanting us to go back to sleep. That's the most important thing, is attack now more than ever. We have them on their heels in retreat. Don't stop now that they're in retreat. Expose them as war criminals.
Es grave y mortal.
It's a deadly illness health officials in Equatorial Guinea have never seen before, but others have, and they're worried.
Marburg belongs to the same family of viruses as Ebola, and like Ebola, has a very high fatality ratio.
What I wanted to impart to you is under 42 CFR, Part 70 and 71, that's the enabling statute for Health and Human Services to assume power upon the declaration of a public health emergency. They've already done that, as you indicated, with the COVID crisis. That has resulted in the suspension of our Constitution. It's already happened. The next one is coming. In that statute, you will see that Marburg is already identified. You will note that the PrEP Act has a Marburg provision that allows for additional spending when invoked. The Health and Human Services has already invoked the Marburg provision, meaning they've already parted ways with money and spent it under the HHS enabling statute to build quarantine camps, amongst other things. Throughout the United States, we interrupted two, one of which was in Cochise County, Arizona, where they were going to build a $1.9 million facility that houses the now merged 4 branches under HHS. The judiciary, law enforcement, corrections, and public health are now all one and the same, and they're all housed in the same facility. So all of these quarantine centers are there. We understand that there could have been a Marburg release that Dr. Chambers will get into. We think that one has already happened. We know that Marburg is not particularly contagious, but it has an extraordinarily high rate of fatality, and we know the mechanism by which this will be released, and that is inside of these shots that people already received, inside the lipid nanoparticles, the hydrogel, there exists pathogens inside of the particles that have not yet opened. Those pathogens are chimeric. They include E. coli Marburg, Ebola staphylococcus, and brewer's yeast, amongst others. We know that upon the broadcast from the 5G system that is now employed across the United States, and the world for that matter, when they broadcast an 18 gigahertz signal for 1 minute, 3 different times as a pulse, it will cause those lipid nanoparticles to swell and release these pathogenic contents, thereby causing a Marburg epidemic that they've already spent the money on. It's already done, right? The Marburg epidemic, for purposes of the law, has happened, and now we just need the actual disaster to happen.
The lipid
Fat is what encases the delivery, and then it is activated and released by pulsing the 18 gigahertz. Is that correct, Todd?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Think of the lipid nanoparticles as little bombers. And what happened is the various manufacturers of these shots included 3 separate HIV proteins in each of them, including the AD5 adjuvant. The reason for that was to disarm people's immune systems so that those little fat bombers could go inside of the cell and deliver their payloads in order to reprogram the person's body to produce synthetic DNA. In this case, they call it S proteins. When they turn that Marburg switch on, it will be M proteins, and it will cause people to produce the Marburg pathogen themselves. Separately, there's truthforhealth.org. Dr. Lee Vliet is in charge of that, and she's put out a Marburg fact sheet along with some things that we can do to try and stop what's coming or at least prevent it. Just like the COVID situation, there are medications that Dr. Chambers can talk about. There are therapeutics. Of course, the CDC got rid of those therapeutics in its advisory, saying only thing that you can do to treat Marburg is a vaccine. There's one actually already prepared for this. I think it's getting its emergency use authorization right now, which also tells us this is going to happen. Secondarily, yesterday we got information from a source, from a whistleblower, showing us that they are now training people on urban collection, isolation, and detention in reference to public health emergency. So they're now training it. This training happens next week in South Carolina, once again in July. I'm sure that this is happening in more than one place. The United Nations has already hired people, specialists in quarantining that is on their payroll. That happened last year. I haven't seen if they've done it more recently. My point in telling you this, folks, is that we have tools to not fall for this again. There are therapeutic drugs that are available. I think one of them is called Fen-Ben in the 444 milligrams. And then I understand from talking to doctors in Africa that have treated this that ozone, either IV or insufflated, also tends to work. So I also have one whistleblower inside of FEMA who said that the plan is to scare the hell out of everybody and scare them into going to the quarantine centers because they don't think they can collect everybody by themselves. That the doors will be open, and then of course in there you'll get your mandatory shot because you came in voluntarily.